The night my life ended started with thunder. Seattle rain doesn't fall softly. It slams against windows, ricochets off rooftops, and fills the air with a sound that feels like punishment. I remember sitting at the edge of my bed, my small backpack already packed, a few shirts, a toothbrush, my sketchbook, and a broken pencil I'd used since third grade. My mother stood at the door, her face hard and pale. My father didn't even look at me. He just said, "You can't live here anymore." It was the kind of sentence that doesn't sound real until you're standing outside, and the door clicks shut behind you. I was 12, barefoot, still wearing my school hoodie. The streetlight flickered as if the world itself couldn't decide whether to look away or not. I remember thinking that maybe they'd open the door again, maybe tell me it was all just a cruel joke, that they didn't mean it. But the porch light went out instead. I stood there until the rain soaked through my hoodie and the night pressed against me like cold metal. Then I started walking. For weeks, the city became my parent. It scolded me with its noise. It tucked me in under bridges. It fed me with discarded sandwiches and gas station apples. I learned the language of survival early. Which alley stayed dry, which store owners looked away when I filled my water bottle from the soda fountain, which benches had armrests that made sleeping impossible. I learned that no one looks twice at a kid with his hood up and his head down. And yet, in all that gray loneliness, I found something strange. Time to draw. My sketchbook became my world. I drew the homes I saw through cafe windows, families laughing, fireplaces glowing, people who looked warm even when it was snowing outside. I called those drawings the places that wouldn't throw me out. Sometimes I'd sketch faces from memory. My mother's eyes, my father's mouth, always drawn mid-shout. But most of the time, I drew imaginary ones. Faces that smiled. Faces that said, "You can stay." I remember one night in particular. It was December. The park lights shimmered through the rain, and I'd found a bench under a half-broken awning. My stomach ached with hunger, and my hand shook so much I could barely hold the pencil. I drew anyway. A small house with yellow windows. Inside it, a table, 2 chairs, a plate of food, and a boy who looked a little like me, but happier. That night, I pressed the page against my chest before falling asleep. If I couldn't have warmth, at least I could draw it. The rain grew heavier. I remember counting each drop on my face like it was proof I was still there, that the world hadn't swallowed me yet. My backpack was my pillow, my sketchbook was my heartbeat, and the city hummed like a distant lullaby. I don't know how long I slept, but the sound of an engine woke me. Headlights swept across the park. For a moment, I thought it was the police. I sat up, clutching my bag, ready to run. But the car stopped. The door opened, and that's when I saw him, the man in the rain. He wasn't dressed like anyone I'd ever met. A dark wool coat, expensive shoes, and eyes that looked like they'd seen more loneliness than I had. His umbrella barely covered him, but he didn't seem to care. He just stood there, staring at me like he was trying to solve a riddle. "You shouldn't be out here," he said quietly. His voice was deep, steady, like warmth you could hear. I pulled my bag closer. "I'm fine," I muttered. I wasn't. My teeth were chattering so hard it made my words shake. He knelt down a few feet away, careful not to come too close. "How old are you?" 14, I lied. The truth sounded too small. He nodded slowly, like he knew. "Do you have somewhere to go?" I didn't answer. My throat burned with the kind of shame that doesn't need words. He sighed softly. "All right," he said. "Then come with me. Just for tonight. You'll be safe. I promise." I wanted to believe him, but people had promised me things before. Still, something about the way he spoke, no pity, no judgment, made me hesitate. He offered his hand. The rain ran down his sleeve, dripping from his fingertips. I stared at it for a long time. Then I took it. His car smelled like coffee and leather. I sat on the edge of the seat, soaking wet, too afraid to touch anything. He didn't ask questions, just turned the heat up and drove. The city lights blurred through the rain, and I caught glimpses of tall glass buildings, like towers from another world. I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, we were pulling into an underground garage. The elevator ride was silent, except for the faint hum of jazz music playing somewhere far above. When the doors opened, I stepped into a world I didn't know existed. The apartment was all glass and soft light, like living inside a cloud. There were paintings on the walls and a faint scent of cinnamon. "Bathroom's through there," he said, pointing. "Towels are in the cabinet. I'll get you something dry to wear." I wanted to thank him, but the word got stuck somewhere behind my ribs. After showering, I wrapped myself in a towel that felt like heaven. When I came out, there were clean clothes waiting on the bed, warm, folded neatly, too big for me, but softer than anything I'd ever owned. He was in the kitchen, pouring something into a mug. "I didn't know what you'd like," he said, sliding a cup toward me. "It's just hot chocolate." I took a sip. It burned my tongue a little, but it was the best thing I'd ever tasted. "Thank you," I whispered. He smiled, the first real smile I'd seen in years. "I'm Nathan," he said. "Nathan Reed." "Eli," I murmured, staring into the mug. "Eli Carter." "Well, Eli Carter," he said, "you can stay here tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest." That night, I slept in a real bed for the first time in years. The sheets smelled like rain and detergent. My body sank into the mattress, unsure how to trust comfort again. Outside, the city still whispered, cars, wind, the faraway call of a train, but it sounded softer now, as if the world had decided to hush for me. When I woke up, sunlight poured through the tall windows. I thought it was a dream until I saw Nathan sitting at the table, reading something on his tablet. He looked up, smiled faintly. "Morning. You're safe here." Safe. That word hit harder than any thunderstorm ever could. He made breakfast, eggs, toast, fruit. I hesitated, then sat down. For a few moments, we just ate in silence. He didn't pry, didn't ask for stories. He only said, "You'll go back to school. You'll have a future. Whatever it takes." I nodded slowly, not trusting my voice. I wanted to believe him, but belief felt like a muscle I hadn't used in years. Then he looked at me, steady, certain. "Eli," he said, "you're not alone anymore." And for the first time since that night on the porch, I believe someone meant it. I used to think kindness was a trick, a setup before the fall. It took months before I stopped flinching every time Nathan spoke softly to me, before I stopped checking the door every night to make sure it would still open in the morning. He didn't ask me to explain my past. Not once. Instead, he built a present for me, one quiet step at a time. Within weeks, he had arranged for a tutor to help me catch up on the years I'd lost. Her name was Grace, silver hair, soft voice, and a heart that seemed to run entirely on tea and compassion. She didn't look at me like a project. She looked at me like a possibility. "Math might be boring," she said during our first session, "but survival? You already mastered that. Everything else will be easy." Her belief in me was contagious. For the first time, I started believing too. Nathan set up a routine: breakfast at 8, lessons till noon, art in the afternoons. He'd peek into the studio sometimes while I drew, holding a cup of coffee, watching silently like he was guarding a secret. "You draw like you're remembering something," he said once. "I am," I answered. "What are you remembering?" The way it felt to want things I couldn't have. He didn't press further, just nodded, thoughtful. That was Nathan's gift. He didn't fix pain. He made space for it to breathe until it learned to fade. Seattle became a different city after that. The rain still came, but now it landed on the windows of a place I could call mine. My room overlooked Elliott Bay, a view so wide it felt like the sky was learning to forgive me. Grace helped me decorate it. Light blue curtains, stacks of sketch pads, a shelf of secondhand novels, and a plant I somehow managed to keep alive. Sometimes I'd wake up early and watch the ferries glide across the water. The fog would roll in, and the city would disappear behind it, like a trick mirror. It reminded me of how my life used to look, gone one moment, visible the next. On my 14th birthday, Nathan surprised me with a cake. I didn't even know he remembered. The frosting said, "To new beginnings." "I didn't think people like you celebrated birthdays," I teased. He laughed, a real laugh, not the polite kind. "People like me? Grown-ups with spreadsheets instead of hearts." "Ah," he said, smiling. "Maybe, but you're proof that hearts still work." That night we stayed up late, watching old movies. He told me about his life before success, growing up in a small town, coding in his parents' garage, losing his mother before he made his first million. He said money solved a lot, but not everything. "You can buy a roof," he said, but not peace. Years passed quietly, but not emptily. By the time I turned 17, school no longer felt like punishment. I started painting again, real paintings this time, not just sketches of homes I could never enter. I painted light, color, and the faces of strangers I'd seen on rainy nights. My art teacher once said, "You paint hope like someone who fought for it." I didn't correct her. Nathan came to my first student art show. I still remember how he stood there, surrounded by parents and teachers, looking at my canvas like it was a sunrise. He didn't say much, just smiled and said, "I knew you'd get here." And for the first time, I felt what pride looked like reflected in someone's eyes. He wasn't my father, not exactly. He was the man who taught me how to be one someday. Every dinner, every late-night talk, every shared silence built a rhythm between us. Not dependency, but a quiet loyalty. Sometimes, when I caught his reflection in the glass wall overlooking the skyline, I wondered what he saw when he looked at me. I didn't know it yet, but admiration can be a dangerous seed. It grows roots long before you realize what kind of tree it's becoming. College changed everything. I'd earned a partial scholarship to the University of Washington's Fine Arts program, a victory Nathan celebrated like it was his own. He paid for the rest of my tuition, no questions asked. I moved into a small dorm room near campus, and for the first time in years, I lived somewhere without his voice echoing down the hallway. Freedom felt exhilarating and terrifying. That's where I met Miles. He was a sophomore, tall, confident, with a grin that dared the world to tell him no. He wore his jacket like armor and spoke like every word was a spark. He noticed my sketches one afternoon in the campus cafe. "You draw like you're running from something," he said, leaning over my sketchbook. "Maybe I am," I replied. "Then let me guess. Troubled past, mysterious benefactor, deep eyes full of secrets?" I rolled mine. "You watch too many movies." "Maybe," he said, smiling. "But you talk about someone a lot. Nathan, right? The guy who saved you." I froze. I hadn't realized how much I mentioned him until that moment. Miles laughed softly. "You talk about him like he's your whole world." I didn't know how to answer that because maybe he was. College life was louder, messier, more unpredictable than anything I'd known. There were art shows, midnight pizza runs, crowded studio sessions filled with paint fumes and laughter. Miles was always there, reckless, fun, the kind of person who believed the future was a rumor. He dragged me into conversations about everything: love, ambition, rebellion. "Don't you ever just want to break a rule?" he asked once, handing me a soda instead of the coffee Nathan had insisted I stick to. "I've broken enough," I said. "Then break a small one," he grinned. "Those are the ones that make you feel alive." I laughed, but something inside me shifted, a quiet rebellion against the safe, structured world Nathan had built for me. Nathan tried to keep in touch, dinners every other week, quick calls to check how classes were going. But slowly I started canceling. First because of projects, then because of parties, then because I didn't know what to say anymore. He noticed. Of course he did. He'd send a short message. "Proud of you. Don't forget to rest." And I'd reply hours later, pretending I was too busy. One night, I stopped by the penthouse after months of avoiding it. He was in his study, reading. The city glowed behind him like liquid glass. "You look older," he said, smiling faintly. "College will do that to you." "I'm glad." "How's everything?" "Good," I lied. "Still painting?" "Sometimes." "Eating?" "When I remember." He chuckled softly. "That's a no." It should have felt comforting, the same warmth I'd always known, but something in me twisted instead. His care felt heavy now, like invisible strings tying me to a version of myself I was trying to outgrow. At school, things got complicated. I told Miles that my scholarship covered everything, even though Nathan was still paying for most of it. I started staying out later, joining group shows and parties that ran until dawn. I wasn't drinking, but I liked the feeling of being surrounded by noise, of drowning out the quiet voice that kept reminding me who made all this possible. Miles teased me about my guardian angel more than once. "Come on," he'd say, "you don't owe that guy your life. You made it yourself." But that wasn't true, and hearing it made me defensive. One night, after a small exhibit, I saw Nathan waiting outside the gallery. He looked proud but tired. like he'd been standing there too long. "You didn't tell me you were showing tonight," he said gently. "I didn't think it mattered." I replied, sharper than I meant to. "It matters to me. I'm not a kid anymore, Nathan." "I know," he said. "That's what makes it hard." The silence between us stretched, fragile and uncomfortable. Then he said something I didn't expect. "I just want you to have a life that feels like your own." I nodded, but I didn't understand what he meant until much later. That semester, I stopped answering his calls altogether. It wasn't anger. It was fear. Fear of needing him too much, of being the boy on the bench again. But distance has its own cost. The more I pushed him away, the emptier my world felt. Even Miles noticed it. "You've got ghosts, Eli," he said one night, "and one of them's still alive." He was right. No matter how loud college got, no matter how many people fill my life, I couldn't quiet the echo of Nathan's voice in my mind. Calm, patient, steady. The man who once pulled me out of the rain was still there, somewhere beyond the storm I was now making for myself. It started with a whisper. I was walking across campus when I heard it, low voices, quick laughter that stopped the moment I looked up. "Yeah, that's him," someone said. "The kid with the Millionaire sponsor." Another voice added, "He's basically living off that guy. Must be nice." The words followed me like shadows. By the end of the week, they weren't whispers anymore. They were rumors. People in my art program started looking at me differently, some curious, some cruel. A few professors even hinted that my opportunities came from connections, not talent. I told myself I didn't care. But of course I did. Every word felt like sandpaper against something fragile inside me. It all came to a head during a studio session. Miles cornered me by the window, his tone half serious, half joking. "So what's the truth, Eli?" he said. "Is Nathan your dad or your keeper?" I froze. He shrugged. "Everyone's wondering. You never talk about your family, and that guy shows up everywhere you go. It's like he owns you." "Stop," I said quietly. "I'm just saying." I said, "Stop, Miles." The room went silent. Even the hum of the fluorescent lights seemed to pause. I grabbed my sketchbook and left without looking back. By the time I reached Nathan's penthouse, I was shaking. Anger, humiliation, exhaustion. I couldn't tell them apart anymore. I just knew I needed answers. He was in his office when I arrived, typing something on his laptop. "Eli," he said, surprised. "You're early. Why didn't you tell me?" I blurted out. "Tell you what? That everyone knows. That I'm your charity case. That the only reason I'm even in that program is because of you." He set his glasses down, calm as always. "Is that what you think?" "That's what everyone thinks." I snapped. "You control everything. My school, my life, my future. I can't breathe without it being because of you." His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. A quiet hurt, sharp and immediate. He leaned back in his chair, his voice low. "You think I saved you from myself, Eli?" I didn't answer. He stood up, slow, deliberate. "I saved you because you deserve a chance. That's all I ever wanted for you, to know what it feels like to be free." "Free?" I laughed bitterly. "I'm a story you can tell at dinner parties. The boy from the park. Your personal project." "Stop," he said quietly, and there was something final in the way he said it. But I didn't stop. I said things I didn't mean, things that burned as they left my mouth. He didn't yell. He didn't defend himself. He just said, "I'm sorry if I made you feel small when all I wanted was to see you stand tall." I couldn't look at him after that. I grabbed my bag and walked out before the silence could finish breaking me. It rained that night. Of course it did. I wandered through the city, aimless and soaked, ending up at Grace's house without really meaning to. She still tutored part-time and kept an office filled with papers, brushes, and old memories. The lights were off, but the door was unlocked. She told me once I could come by any time. I was looking for comfort, maybe a distraction. Instead, I found the truth. On her desk was a folder with my name on it. Inside, letters. Dozens of them. Recommendation letters, applications, even a scholarship essay written in Nathan's careful handwriting. He'd submitted it for me months before my art show. The words hit like a tidal wave. Eli Carter's art is not about talent alone. It's about survival through creation. His work reminds us what it means to rebuild beauty from the broken. If given the chance, he won't just succeed. He'll inspire. I stood there reading those lines again and again until the ink blurred from the tears in my eyes. All the anger I'd carried for weeks, it dissolved into something heavier, shame. He hadn't been controlling my life. He'd been protecting it. I ran out of the house into the downpour. The city lights smeared into ribbons across the wet streets, reflections trembling like the truth I'd tried so hard to ignore. The rain soaked me to the bone, just like that night years ago. Only this time, I knew exactly where I was running. Home. The elevator doors opened to the soft hum of the penthouse. Everything was dim except for a single lamp in the corner. Nathan was standing by a suitcase, folding a jacket. He turned when he heard me. "Eli," he said, quietly surprised. "It's late. What are you?" "I found the letters." I interrupted, breathless. "Grace's desk. The scholarship. The essays. You did all of it." He sighed, not in regret, but in understanding. "You weren't supposed to see those." "Why? Why hide it?" "Because it wasn't about me," he said simply. "It was your dream. I just helped it find a door." I stepped forward, my throat tight. "And I accused you of—" He raised a hand, stopping me. "It's all right." "No, it's not." My voice cracked. "You gave me everything, and I threw it back at you because I was scared." "Scared of what?" I swallowed hard. The truth hurt on its way out. "Of needing you," I said. "Of losing the only person who ever believed in me." He looked at me for a long moment, the kind of silence that says more than words ever could. Then he said softly, "Eli, the goal was never for you to need me. It was for you to learn that you could stand on your own, that you were enough long before I ever showed up." He zipped the suitcase shut. "I'm leaving for a retreat. Just a few weeks. Grace will check in on you." I shook my head. "You're running away." "No," he said. "I'm stepping back. There's a difference." The rain hit the glass behind him, streaking down like tiny rivers. He walked to the window, hands in his pockets. "You've been living in my world for a long time, Eli. Maybe it's time to build your own." "I don't know where to start," I whispered. He turned, smiling faintly. "Start with what you love. Paint what you've lived. That's enough." The next few weeks were quiet, painfully so. Nathan was gone, and the apartment felt hollow, echoing with the absence of his calm voice. I threw myself into my art, painting the only story I knew how to tell mine. The sketches that had once been shelters for my pain became windows instead, letting the light in. When a university announced their annual art exhibition, I submitted my collection, Homes Without Walls. Each canvas was a fragment of my life. The bench, the rain, the loneliness, the rescue. The final piece was a portrait, a figure standing beneath a streetlight, umbrella in hand, eyes full of quiet mercy. I titled it The Man in the Rain. Opening night came with its own kind of storm. Not rain, but nerves. The gallery buzzed with conversation, flashes from cameras bouncing off white walls. Professors, students, donors, all gathered to see what we'd built. When it was my turn to speak, I stepped to the podium, palms trembling. "My name is Eli Carter." I began, voice steady but soft. Most of these paintings were born from nights when I thought the world had forgotten me. But someone didn't. I paused, searching the crowd. This collection is dedicated to the man who found me in the rain. Not because he wanted to save a life, but because he believed one was worth saving. The audience applauded. Some smiled, some teared up. But my eyes were scanning the crowd for just one person. And then I saw him. Nathan stood quietly at the back of the room. No fanfare. No announcement, just a faint smile that said everything words couldn't. Our eyes met across the sea of faces. I didn't move toward him, and he didn't come closer. We didn't need to. The distance between us wasn't emptiness anymore. It was respect. He nodded once, as if to say, "You did it." And I nodded back, meaning, because of you. After the show, I found a note tucked beneath one of my canvases. It was his handwriting. "You built your own home, Eli. And it's beautiful." And I stood there reading it until the crowd began to fade. Outside, the rain had started again, gentle this time, almost kind. As I stepped into the night, the city looked different, brighter somehow. The same streets that once felt endless now felt like pathways leading somewhere. I thought of that first night, the bench, the storm, the headlights slicing through the dark. I thought of the boy I was and the man I was becoming. Some people find home in walls. I found mine in a person, and in the quiet that followed, I whispered to the rain, "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." Nathan and Eli's story isn't about romance in the conventional sense. It's about recognition. Love here means seeing someone completely, their pain, their fear, their potential, and choosing to nurture it without asking for anything in return. Eli's journey shows that real love doesn't bind, it liberates. And Nathan's kindness proves that sometimes the most powerful act of love is to let someone grow beyond you.